Okay, hi guys. My name is Michael Capato, and I live here in Hamtramck, and I make musical instruments primarily with found objects and cigar boxes and cookie tins. And let's go to my first slide. Some of the instruments that I make out of found objects. You can see various types of guitars, cigar box guitars, banjos. Some of what I do is based on historical stuff, and some's just fun. These instruments are at the root of American music all the way up through rock and roll, but they started their journey in Africa as single string instruments that were based on a musical bow. And they're one of the oldest instruments known. As you can see, they're played by either striking or blowing and striking onto a stretched bow. Now, a lot of people wonder, why didn't people just go out and buy guitars? Why did they make their own instruments? Well, for one thing, especially if you were Black in the South, it was very difficult due to racism to just easily go into white-owned stores. But in 1894, it started to change. The Sears Roebuck catalog came out, and it was a catalog that was sent to people's houses. In a lot of ways, it's the first Amazon. And 6 years later, they began listing guitars and selling guitars in it. The only trouble is, well, the catalog, the cheapest guitars sold for $22. Sounds fine in our money. But in 1902, that $22 was actually equal to $677. And if you were a laborer in the South, you made somewhere between $260 and $520 a year. So buying your own instruments just wasn't feasible. In fact, a lot of the early recorded musicians, they were playing the studio's guitars, and it was only after they got their first royalties or paychecks for recording that they bought their own instruments. So what happened was, before the 20th century, most of the goods that you found in stores were in big barrels, just like you see in the picture, including tobacco. Cigars were bundled up, and you bought a handful of them, and just about everything was bought in bulk. But when Abe Lincoln, during the Civil War, he needed a way to pay for it. So they started taxing things that were normally bought in bulk, including cigars. And they had to put the cigars into boxes, and each box had to have a tax stamp, which basically said the taxes were paid, and they were in 5s or 50 or 10 cigars. And they started putting the cigar makers started putting them in very beautiful and fancy boxes made of really nice wood. Now the thing is, these were one-shot deals. And after you smoked your cigars, you had a box lying around, and there were only so many little things like buttons that you could keep in boxes. So they got tossed out. Well, they were often made of some of the same wood that guitars were made of. And people figured out that if you stuck your Didley Bow stick into a cigar box, you basically had what we would call a poor man's guitar. This gentleman, little Freddie King, as I mentioned, blues musicians most of them got their start playing these sort of instruments. Little Freddie King is one of the last surviving bluesmen who actually is still around, who got his start making these sort of instruments. And he tells this great little story. So it wasn't just blues musicians, but it turned out that pretty much at the forefront of every genre or type of music in America, the people who are considered like the founders or the fathers of it all got started with making their own instruments. Not just Africa, every culture on the planet has this sort of a style of instrument, very similar, single or just a handful of strings. Every culture, in fact, I'm sure one of the reasons I love doing this class at Hamtramck is because, like, my neighbors across the street are from Yemen. My neighbors next to me are Bangladesh. And they see me with my instruments, and I show them, and I tell them that every culture on this planet, including you guys, have these sort of instruments. I'm getting ready to do this. So what exactly is this Canjo thing? And I hope you guys got kits. Canjo is very similar to the Didley Bow. It is a monochord, meaning a single string instrument. Let's take a look at what it is made of. Basically, it is a can and a stick and a single string and a way to tune it and a couple other parts. On a guitar, there's two important parts, the nut, which is at the front, and the bridge, which is somewhere toward the back. And it's between those two that the string is stretched, where the ability to make noise with it. In this case, the can itself acts like a bridge. The hole in the back where you'll put your string through is where it is. The can acts like a resonator. A resonator is something that takes a vibration and vibrates higher and doubles it or triples it and makes it hearable. This is all physics, and it's all about how we hear. So sound exists as waves of pressure, and those waves travel from what makes it, vibrating the air, to our ear. And it goes in through various parts of the ear, through the outer ear, the ear canal, where it vibrates on a little membrane called the eardrum. And that vibration then triggers another part of our thing that converts this vibration into electronic signals that our brain turns into sound. So musical instruments are very fascinating examples of physics. So a guitar string has a certain frequency, amount of vibration that it can vibrate at. And it's called usually the fundamental frequency, the fundamental tone. And it's measured in something called hertz. And a hertz is one cycle per second. Different string lengths and thicknesses, called gauges, have the ability to have a certain fundamental frequency. The string you're going to be putting on your Canjo, which is a 0.012 of an inch, it's very tiny, can be tuned safely without breaking to either a C or a D. So when you press down on the various frets, you're shortening the string. And the shorter you make a string, the higher it vibrates, or faster. So it changes the frequency or the tone of the notes. And there are 8 notes called an octave. Some of you have already probably know this better than me. And if we're tuning an instrument to a C, each of the notes, as you press down on the fret, becomes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then the octave where it repeats. And there's also semitones in a full guitar fretboard, but we play these usually with a dulcimer or diatonic fretboard, which basically takes all the extra notes out and leaves you with just those main notes, which are similar to do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, da, ti, do. They do add one note, which is number 6 on your fretboard, and that's called the blue note. And that just allows you to play with a little more panache or style or swing. So let's build it. I hope you saw the little sheet with the instructions. Okay, and I just want to show you, you can use any sorts of cans. Actually, this is one of my favorite cookies from the dollar store, so I like to use those for Canjos. You can also make multiple string versions. This one, I actually found this can at a flea market that somebody had glued this ad from a comic book to teach yourself guitar. Now, I modified the kit instructions to make it easier because I figured drilling holes would not be easy to do. So you will find that you have a little pin. That's going to be for the one hole that you all need to drill that I could not pre-drill. I counted 500 holes on all the kits in total. You have on this can 2 holes. You have one going down and one where the string goes in. You want this hole that's pointing down. So in that first hole that is pre-drilled, I want you to line up your can over that hole. And because the can actually has a little bump from where I drilled it out, you might be able to find that hole really easy. So you need one of, all the screws are silver except one that's brass, and that's your nut. So you need one of these silver screws. And what you want to do is take and try to put it slightly through that hole already, which makes it easier to find on that hole. And then take your little screwdriver and screw that one in. So this is your tuner. And you'll see if you look at this part, there's brass or gold colored gear. Well, there's only really one way to put this in. So on this side of the can, of the stick, up here, where this hole is, this is their headstock. And these holes have been pre-drilled for you. So you want to take it so this part here, the plastic part, is facing up. Push it in so that part goes through, and it's going to find there's a little bit of a hole on the other side. So you want it to go like that, if you guys can see. And you'll want the other two silver screws and screw those in. Now, if you look at the tuner and if you start twisting, turning this, you will notice inside here, there's a little hole on that bar. On this bar right here, there's a little hole. What you want to do, and I usually take a thumb on one side and just hold the string at some point, and you want to put the string near, it doesn't have to be on the slot right away, but right by the slot, you put the string down through this hole and you pull it through. You can see it's right through, it's through the hole on the other side. And then I do it one more time. I go back up through the bar, pull it, and then go down through that same hole I went through again. And you put the screw in that little slot, or the string in that little gold slot, hold it with one hand, and then start twisting this knob. We're going to try to get you at least close enough to a C. Now I have a digital tuner, but like I said, there's an online tuner or a phone app that can be used. The online tuner is free. You just go to the onlinetuner.com. But if you could see my screen, it's saying it's a C. So 14 turns after you put the string in, and around 12 or 14 will get you close to being in tune enough to play. The company that I buy parts from, C.B. Gitty, made a generous donation, and a guy who I've never met named Gary DeRocher actually paid the shipping cost when he heard that they were coming to this city. So that's really it, except here's just rocking out to some Didley Bow rock and roll music.